Hello and welcome to a knitting video. This is just me finishing up the neck hole of a sweater that I've been making. And to start off, I'm just gonna say that I'm using a vintage fine yarn that I got from my grandma. So it probably won't be possible to find this specific yarn again. I'm so sorry if anyone's interested. And I'm using 12mm circular needles. And I originally used double strands for the rest of the sweater, but I decided to switch it up with a collar to make it more delicate. I quite like the contrast it made. I've been finding it quite hard to crochet with this yarn in the past. I've tried multiple times, but I think the problem is that I can't really see the stitches since it's one strand with fuzz wrapped around it. It's kind of hard to see what I'm doing, and it also tends to get stuck in itself, which is something that I discovered again with this project. I've been knitting it flat, so even though I'm using circular needles, I decided that going for a flat version instead was something that I was gonna try. And I didn't use a pattern for this. I just went with what I learned from making sweaters in the past, which is I've only made 2. And I crocheted those as well. So I just decided that adapting it to knitting would be easier if I did it flat and then sew the sides together. And well, it's been difficult to make the hole for the neck, I guess, because I had to, since it's just a flat rectangle essentially, you have to cast off the stitches you want to create the hole for the neck. And casting off was fine, but since once again the yarn has a tendency to tangle with itself, when I cast it on again, I couldn't use the long tail cast on method, which is what I used to cast on in the beginning of the project. But in the middle of a project, that isn't really possible since you don't have a tail to cast on with essentially. It tangled up with itself, so it became very, I don't know what to call it, it became very loose essentially, and I didn't like the look of that because it looked neater on one side and then the other side ended up being kind of, well, I would call this sweater, like before I started doing this whole fixing of the neck hole, I don't know if it's called a yoke or not, I'm not sure, but it sort of looked like a the little vest that Shrek wears. That's how I would describe it. The neck hole was very large, larger than I intended, so I decided that I would go in and fix that. So I sewed it together. I made the shoulder pieces larger after I discovered how large the neck hole was, and then I just realized that if I wanted to get any use out of this sweater, I had to do something with the neck to make it look more finished, I guess. And my absolute favorite part of this project was growing out the arms to the sides. That's always a really fun part for me. I enjoy picking up the stitches, and just it feels like you get to see the project come together. And before doing this, I of course sew the sides of the body together, and I just guessed how much space I would need for the arms, and I think my guess was, well, I'd say it turned out well. And I yeah, I just enjoy seeing the arms growing out from the sides. It feels like sort of you get to see the project come together. I don't know if I already said that, but yeah, that's my favorite part. And I decided to use the 12mm circular needles. I originally used 8mm needles, but it didn't give that same airy feel to the finished knitted fabric that I wanted, so I switched it up after a few rows in the beginning, so you can barely tell that I used different needles in the beginning. But it was kind of difficult to switch the loops, or whatever you call them. They were a bit too tight as expected, so I struggled with that for a bit. But now I've learned that switching over to a larger gauge is something that I have to practice with. But it's a learning curve, I suppose. And yeah, I'm quite happy with how this turned out, actually. As I said before, I like the contrast between the double-stranded body and arms next to the single strand neck hole. And I've seen, I think it's Erin B that uploaded a video of a really cool lacy sweater, so I got some inspiration from her and I wanted to try it out. And I'm always in awe of people who can knit really fast or crochet really fast, because that's just not me. So my projects tend to take a little bit longer, but I enjoy the process. It's a fun hobby, essentially, to just sit and relax. And I wish it were possible to like drink tea or coffee while crocheting or knitting, but essentially both of my hands are tied, so it's not really possible. But maybe having a drink to the side could be nice, but I feel like I'd be terrified of knocking that over or like dipping the project in the drink, so maybe that isn't for me either. I haven't tried it, but maybe I should. And I'm still quite new to knitting and crocheting. I've been doing it for just a couple of months now, and as I said, I've made 2 sweaters, I've made a bunch of balaclavas, because that was really fun. I found a pattern in a YouTube video. I'll link it down below if anyone's interested. And it was just a really fun, sort of quick project. It took me, I think, 2 days to make a balaclava. As I said before, I'm not the fastest at knitting or crocheting, but that was fun. I made a Teletubby one for my first balaclava. That's up on my Instagram if anyone's interested. And yeah, I just like making kooky projects, essentially. I'm thinking of getting some more yarn when I have the economy for that, and making maybe a pair of shorts would be fun, or maybe a skirt. I haven't really decided yet, but I've got my eye on some yarn. I'm also gonna be making a blanket for my family dog, which I think she'll enjoy. So yeah, this was my little video showing you just me knitting up the last part of the sweater, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll link both the video for the balaclava and the knitting needles I used in the description below. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.